So we have to understand that once we are already progressing further, it's okay to also reject the company and tell them that, hey, you know what, maybe this is not working out for me, only because I realized I fit somewhere better. So I think that kind of Excel sheet also gives me a very good overview of like the companies and the notes I've created.
Yeah, and one of the common questions I get is like, hey, do I need to do a cover letter? Or you just only customize the CV and send that?
Okay, I think that's like a trick question because for some companies I did do a cover letter, but not all companies. So I think I only did a cover letter for like 2 companies, and these 2 companies were companies that I was really passionate about.
And really they get back to
only one. Yeah. So one got back. Actually, the other one, I actually did do a cover letter when I was very early on my career. I was applying for jobs. I did do a couple of cover letters, and one of them got back to me just this year actually. Yeah. So I got a response after a very long time.
we call it the COVID letter.
I think it is, yeah. So I applied back in 2020, and then I got a response just when I was going to start venturing out for other jobs, right? It was a bit surprising, but then it was also kind of good because I did interview the company because it's something I was interested in back then, but I wanted to know what are they doing now, like what are they innovating on. So I just wanted to go for an interview. Really, I didn't have the intention to sign with them. I just wanted to see what they have. So I think those kind of mock interviews has helped me. Yeah.
I think that's super helpful and that's really, really valuable. Is there anything else you'd like to cover?
Yeah, I think that covers most of
Okay,
it.
so
Thank you.
like there are 3 tips over here, so we're going to go to the second one. So you talk a little bit about designing your portfolio as if it's a product. So yeah, share with us a little bit more on that.
Yeah, so I really like this. I think it's like UX designing your UX portfolio. So be it any type of portfolio, right? Think of it as a product itself. Think of it, what do you exactly want to solve with the product? So what's the end goal of the product? So I think before starting any project, we will always have like our whys, our what, basically answering all our 5 W's and the 1 H, right? And from there you think about, okay, so is this the type of portfolio I want to do? Because based on your positioning earlier on, you know that you have a niche, you have a skill already, and then you want to show that further, and that's when you kind of have to think about how do I want to show it in my portfolio. So I kind of followed a design thinking process. So on my own experience, what I did was when I was applying to companies, really just first define what is my goals by doing this portfolio, and then eventually I thought, okay, who are the people that want to see my portfolio, right? So HR, senior designers, like design managers. So I knew that I had to make my portfolio stand up to all these people as well. And what I did was to talk to some like industry people and be like, hey, what are you looking for in a portfolio? So I understand their needs. So it's really understanding my user needs as well. Eventually I start ideating. So I just start putting out all the projects and like, oh, okay. And then I went to go and look at other people's portfolios as well and be like, oh, how are they doing? What are they doing? And I realized that even the smallest bits actually makes a lot of difference. Prototype, I didn't really prototype. Okay, so I went on Figma and then I created like all my screens, and then I was like, okay, pixel by pixel, how should it look like as well? So it's because as a designer, you apply to a design company for like UX or UI stuff, and if your portfolio, then a person that's going to be hiring you will question, hey, how come this doesn't look like a UX UI portfolio, So really thinking about the visuals as well has helped me, even the interactions, the motions that applies to my portfolio. So those kind of small things actually makes a difference because eventually the people that's going to be hiring you are going to see that these are things that matters to them. Yeah. And that's really it.
Yeah, I think one thing important about the UX design process is also about iterations. I'm interested how many revisions did you make before you say, okay, I'm good, I'm confident.
Every day, I'm just kidding. I mean, like every other time, I will just be like, I don't like this. Like one day I'll like it, and the next day you wake up and you're like, no, I don't like this anymore. I think it's just a very designer thing to have actually. Yeah, but one thing I told myself is, what am I trying to communicate? So my storytelling itself for my portfolio, and I knew that if after I have completed it, I'm ready to send it out. I'll just send it out for now. Because I can always go back and tweak it. I can always revisit my portfolio. It doesn't mean I send it out, it's the end game, So you can always revisit it, always improve it. So I think it's like you mentioned, it's iteration. So even after going for interviews, you can still improve on it. Yeah.
And I personally know, like, many of us designers, we get a little bit self-critical, right? So we're like, oh, I'm too afraid to set it out. It's not perfect enough. Do you have any advice for that? Like how, like just do it, just set it up.
Okay, so I think for me, what I told myself is that there's no harm in rejection. I think you need to be comfortable in rejection. It's okay to not, get a job. It's okay to like them rejecting you, but that doesn't stop us from trying. I think you can always continue to learn, continue to improve. I think getting those advices. So I remember one of my first interviews I had with a very good company. I would say, what was the feedback? I didn't do a great job. And I kind of got that feeling when he was giving me all those advices, but I kind of took it in a hard way initially. But I told myself that, hey, these are all feedbacks that, will be good for me. And what I did was to take those feedback and try and tweak how I was going to present myself. I better prepare myself as well. But funnily, I did get a call back from that same company for a second interview. So I was very surprised actually. I was so surprised. I was like, I was like, hey, no, I didn't expect this at all. I was just telling you that the interview went so bad, But I think that's the thing. I think having the confidence in you will really help. And as much as there are days where you might face like an imposter syndrome, I think it's okay to tell yourself that everybody goes through that. I think even for myself, I go through that almost every other day. I think it's very normal. And when I talk to my design manager or my senior designer, there was one time I talked about imposter syndrome, and he was telling me that, hey, I have it too. Like you're not alone in this.
Explain a little bit, like with examples, what imposter syndrome means to you.
I think for me, it's like, am I doing a good job? I think there's not a question that's popping in your head. Like when I see my design, is it a good design? Or I see a new innovative design. Why am I not doing that? That's so cool, that's so innovative. But I think ideally it's knowing what your goals are, what are we trying to solve, and what is the problem you're addressing, right? So when you talk about those kind of things, is how you kind of tackle the imposter syndrome. And one thing that I kept reiterating to myself back then was that I need to be comfortable with it being a bad thing. And if it's a bad thing, it's a good thing for me because I can learn from it. I can always learn and grow from it. So if it's a bad news today, it means it's a good news tomorrow. Yeah.
I love how you reframe that, and I don't think a lot of people can do that Jada mind trick. So I think it's great and really good advice. But I think that for a lot of people, we need rejections, and sometimes we get really discouraged by that. And then we have this imposter syndrome, and we haven't really broken into the industry. We don't have that foundation, and moreover, like in your case, you don't have that degree. Then maybe you start questioning yourself on the decisions you made. Have you ever felt like that, and how do you kind of like manage it, to stay positive and optimistic?
I think when I was applying for NTC especially, I actually faced a couple of rejections, actually a lot of them. And I was thinking, is this the career I wanted to do? I did question that a couple of times when I was kind of breaking into the industry. But then one day, very funnily, what I did was to go on LinkedIn. I really just start talking to people, just reaching out to them and be like, hey, can you give me advice on what to do and what's going to happen? And this time I wasn't in the industry yet. So I did not know many peers around me. So what I had to do was to go and find for those peers, go and find for those people I can talk to. I also covered my next slide about those networking stuff. But yeah, I think ideally for me was the rejection shouldn't push you down. Like it just shouldn't put you down because you should tell yourself that everybody's learning, everybody's growing. The industry is always evolving. Back then we call it UX designer like 4 years ago, 5 years ago, and today we're running product designer. So it's just very different, and I think things always evolve, things always change, and you can also always keep growing. So don't let one setback just fail you entirely.
That's good advice. So with that, let's go to the next tip. And you mentioned the importance of networking and how it helped you land your first role. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Okay, so back in 2020, I just finished my national service and I tried to apply for a couple of jobs and then I got rejected, right? I knew something was wrong and I knew I wasn't reaching out to the right people and knowing what the industry was even about. I sent out a couple of LinkedIn, and even then, even for those LinkedIn messages, I got rejected as well. I mean, I didn't get a reply back, and I think it's okay because they are busy people as well and they have their time as well. But those 2 people that I got a call back from, and they said that, hey, you know what? Let's talk. Let's chat. you can just share your portfolio with us. I'll share my portfolio and they'll give me like critiques as well. And during that time, we didn't have platforms such as CuriousCore or like any other platforms. Now we have other mentoring platforms as well. We didn't have all those. So it was kind of a struggle. It was a pandemic. So I did struggle a little bit, but I reached out to these people and fortunately they gave me very good advices, which allowed me to tweak my portfolio. So always talk to people and really share all those raw things, raw files, and really get advices from them. I think that's what helped me. Even if you think it's unpolished, it's fine. It's really fine to be unpolished. You don't have to have everything perfect to the pixel. Yeah. So
I think it goes back to the second point, right? It's like you're collecting user feedback.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think those okay, I've done a good job. I've created a portfolio already. I'm gonna send it out, but then you face all these rejections, right? And that's when those networking actually helped. And especially during the pandemic, when there wasn't all these mentoring platforms, I felt like, hey, who am I supposed to reach out to? So I think that was a struggle that I had. But yeah, networking really helped me. So talk to the peers, talk to the industry people as well. And I think that eventually will help you push you forward as well.
I'm going to ask you to go a little bit more in depth. Exactly what did you say in your message when you reach out to them that made them like say yes, like roughly?
Okay, I think if I remember correctly, it's been 3 years. I said, hi guys, or hi, I'm actually applying for jobs for Uiux, and I really like the company and the work you're doing at the company. I see that you are like a product designer or like a UX designer in your company. Is it okay if I could get like 5 or 10 minutes of your time just to like run you through some of my projects and all that? And they're like, hey, just schedule a 30 minutes chat with me. That's when like I was able to like, hey, okay.
I think one thing I really like is the generosity of this community over here in UX and how we like people always give back to the next generation, like what you're doing right now. So that's really awesome. And like what if they give you 30 minutes? Like, do you do anything after that as a follow-up?
Yeah, so I got like a telegram. So he said, message me through Telegram, and he gave me his Telegram, and he was like giving me advice along the way. But I think it wasn't really like a mentor, I would say, because it was just like a 2-session thing, and then eventually I said thank you, and I really treated him for a coffee as well. So just paying him back some of the help he has given me. So I think that's how we kind of stay in touch.
So you do like update this person, like how's your career progress and what you're doing?
Not anymore, I would say. Actually, it was just those 2 sessions that I had, a bit anymore. But I still keep in touch with a lot of my peers as well, just to stay relevant, right? Also, and to know what the industry knows. Yeah.
I'm quite curious about one thing. Why are you trying so hard to get into NTUC? Like most people want to get into Grab, most people want to get into DBS or like Facebook. Why are you trying so hard for NTUC?
Good question. So I wasn't trying NTUC actually. I was trying DBS. Yeah. So I was really trying for DBS at the start. But I think NTUC, I got called up NTUC after all those iterations in my portfolio, right? And that's when I decided to go with NTUC at the time. And the reason why I kind of went with NTUC, I didn't have much experience. And I think one mistake that people tend to do, or I've read online, is that they tend to just jump to any opportunities that they see. Like if I have an offer straight away, I'm going to go for it. I think that shouldn't be the case. I know it can seem hard to like get an offer, but it's a reason why you apply for it. When I was applying or when I was starting out and I was applying to a few companies, I realized one of the companies that I applied to didn't really I didn't really like what they were doing, but I didn't get an offer. So I told myself, and that was my first offer before NTC. So I was like, hey, should I just take it because I already got an offer? It can kickstart my career. But I told myself that okay, let's just read it out, let's just see. And I told the company that maybe give me a week to think about it, and then I'll get back to you. And eventually I said, I don't think this is the right path for me. So even though I was struggling at that time to get a job, I told myself that it's a decision I had to make and I can go for mine. I can still try to explore other opportunities. Yeah.
I love that mindset because saying no to something means that you can say yes to other things that matter more to you.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So I think that's conviction in that. And I think that's not easy, especially given that was quite a desperate situation.
Yeah, it was pandemic. I was like, everybody is like looking for jobs. People are getting retrenched and all that. So,
and you mentioned there was pandemic and there was a lot of inconveniences. And did you felt the pressure from the competition? Because I mean, I noticed as an instructor and an educator that the pressure is just going up, right? The standards just going up in terms of like the portfolio. So, what did you do to prepare yourself or differentiate yourself from the other candidates?
Yeah, I think for me, like you mentioned, it's very true. Standards always go up. We are always competing with everyone in the industry, not just like the entry designer, but even the senior designers as well. So everybody is competing at a certain level. But I think what makes a person stand out is, again, the small little things that people notice. Are you giving a good experience? So for example, in my portfolio, I decided to include motion stuff a little bit, and also think about my interaction, how can we make it interactive as well. So that's kind of how I would say I stood out. I decided to use all the little things to make it special. Yeah.
So it sounds like you paid a lot of attention to detail in your portfolio, and you added little touches. Like, did anyone give you like positive feedback around that?
Okay, so I wouldn't say that they noticed it, but that's the thing, right? Like certain things you may not notice, but it eventually makes the whole experience. For example, I really like what Apple just recently did with the whole notch, and they are making it like dynamic and all that. They're calling it dynamic island. I don't like the name of it. Yeah. But that being said, like this small thing, which is a trouble to the user, they make it so delightful and so nice to use, right? So I think even though it's such a big improvement, I think it is an experience. So really, the entire experience is different, or even how smooth the app is, or like even how I'm using my things. Those kind of small things actually make a big difference.
So out of curiosity, I've actually went to check out your times. Like, did you code it yourself, or what's happening? Because it doesn't look like a standard kind of like templated design.
Yeah, so what I did was to actually look at all those templates out there first. I went to Squarespace, Wix, and I was like looking at templates and trying to do templates, and I was like, I don't like this. Like, this is not me. This doesn't show my personality at all. So I decided to spend my time. So at that time, I was still working, and I decided to spend my time after work, just about 1 to 2 hours, and look at other portfolios. What are they doing? What is different? What is like all the small things that I was mentioning? Eventually, I decided to go with like a platform like Webflow, and I think ultimately it doesn't matter what platform you use, but if you want that level of like let's say customization, then yes, it matters. And if you are thinking about, oh, I don't know how to code, I don't know how to code as well. Like I really don't know how to code, but yeah. So Webflow, I think it just took a little bit of learning curve, like any other software, but it really helped my portfolio, but to understand how development works itself, like the so small things as well. Yeah.
And I think for everyone else's information, you can also use Squarespace and Uiux Folio, which are very, very common options. So Webflow is slightly more intermediate and advanced, I think.
Yeah, and if you are willing to spend a little bit more time on it, then definitely, yeah. But I did start out when I was applying very early. I did start with UX Folio as well, and I think ultimately, even though those small things matter, what eventually want to convey again is your goal. Why are you doing a portfolio in the first place, and the kind of story you want to tell as well. So, just relating back to my portfolio, right? I think keeping it short really helped me as well, because people are just glancing through, right? And having images and all those really help as well. Yeah.
So a lot of people look at your portfolios on their mobile phones these days. So I'm just wondering, like, did you do anything to mobile optimize it? Because I know some of our student portfolios not being mobile optimized, and yeah, like I'm just interested if you did anything.
Yes, I try to make it responsive. So like even tablet, mobile, like any screen size, I still want it to be legible, readable. Again, we are in the UX industry, so experience matters, and all these things people will notice. So I wanted to ensure that all this is covered, so that because if I'm going to be a nice designer, then I would also like to know that people looking at my design portfolio know that this guy can design, right? Yeah.
That's great. So I think the AV team, can we switch to Slido to see if we have any questions and if the audience wants any questions, and Winnie, if possible, can pass me the iPad, and well, we can take questions on the ground at the moment. All right. Okay, cool. So I think just to continue on the thread while we're waiting for questions, and for those in the audience or those viewing the live stream, you're welcome to stream in some questions. while we do some discussion. So was that like a very conscious effort, I heard, in terms of like you selecting the kind of companies you want to apply for? Because you said 15 companies seem excessive. Yeah, so I want to understand the thinking behind it. Like, what would you have done differently if not 15?
I think I would have selected companies that I really know that I wanted to go for. Because what I was trying to do with those 15 companies is know the industry. So I knew that I wanted to apply for e-commerce, I wanted to apply for something fintech related or maybe logistics related. So I kind of applied to all these three industries from different companies. But if I could have done it differently, I think I would have told myself that, hey, I want to try out one industry and just apply to those company industry and not exceeding maybe 5 and then see how the response is. If the response is bad, and then try to continue to iterate it. Yeah.
Okay, I think that's really fair. And I'm also quite interested, initially you only had projects from school, right? So these are not exactly commercial projects. So in the initial mix of your portfolio, what did you put? Did you put like your projects from school, or was it like a freelance project? What's going on?
So I did put my one freelance project, but that had nothing to do with UX. It was more like branding and graphic design, but still decided to put it in. And then I had like 2 other projects, which was like school projects. But what I try to do is really convey what the project is about and like the kind of impact it made. Because when your product hasn't launched, you can't really make an impact, right? But what I was going to do, or actually did, was to actually survey people based on like prototype. So I showed my friends actually and like get their customer feedback and whatnot, and then try how I improve. So it's just showing them like the process itself. And again, it's about the entry level, right? If you're an entry level portfolio, I think the expectations of the person who's hiring you would also not be, oh, they need to know everything, they need to be like a senior designer or something like that. So I think showing them that you have good knowledge of your process as well as good UI skills can actually make a very good entry level portfolio.
And what I hear you say is that you spend extra time to go and collect user feedback so that you have a stronger case study to present.
Yeah, because I think at least collecting it from like 20 to 30 people is already, and I think those surveys help me to kind of show them, oh, this is the possible impact that I could make. So they know, and as a person that's hiring, right, again, thinking from their point of view, they'll be like, hey, so this guy is thinking about his users, this guy is thinking about like what he wants to do and how he wants to improve things. So they know that they're thinking of the longer term. Yeah.
That's excellent. So someone in the audience asked, how long did you spend to do your portfolio from ideation until your first MVP?
I think it took me about 2 months-ish, I guess.
And this was not full-time, right? You were just doing it outside of whatever work you were doing.
Yeah, exactly. So I was not like full-time. So each day I spent about 1 to 2 hours to look at other portfolios and also do my own entire design thinking process. Yeah, so about 1 to 2 months.
So someone mentioned like in school we're taught to follow the UX design process from end to end, from research to design to like testing for your case study. Is it the same in a real work scenario, or is it different?
I would say it's different, but at the same time, I think having that knowledge was really good because what we learned from school, I think I would say that those processes or those lectures that I've been for has helped me to stay relevant and stay knowledgeable. So that's one. Secondly, do we do that in companies? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. So I think it really depends on the project. So let's say if a project is just a very small tweak, a company wouldn't spend the entire process trying to do that. So they would straight away maybe jump to ideation and testing it out and seeing if something works or not. Let's say it's a bigger project, then yes, probably I'll take the entire process of like brainstorming with my stakeholders, doing research, and like having those whole thing featured and launched, and then also testing and seeing what's the impact of the matrix and things like that. Yeah.
I think I'm going to ask you about 3 more questions, and then I know we have a lot of enthusiasm in questioning you, and you're all welcome to talk to Subra a little bit after this. So, someone's asking, what's the fastest way for me to improve my design skills?
What's the fastest way? I think there's no fastest way for anything actually. it's a constant iteration and improvement, right? Like if you are improving today, tomorrow something new is going to come already. So you always have to just keep relevant, stay relevant. And I think if I'm not wrong, I personally also took a course in UI also while I was in NTUC because I realized I was lagging behind. Like I wanted to learn more, so that's when I took a course in UI design itself. Yeah.
Awesome. So, can you tell us a little bit about your proudest achievement in your career so far?
I wouldn't say career, but I think I would say the award that I mentioned just now. I think that really pushed me forward to know that this is the industry I want to do. But one thing within my career that I was very proud of is actually not the most proudest moment is when I actually presented a work and I kind of got rejected for it. I was bad work and like why is this a bad work, things like that. That was like a turning point because I knew what I can present to my stakeholders. I knew what I should present to my stakeholders as well. So I think that one incident really helped me. And I think that even though not the proudest moment, I would say it's the moment that I was able to understand how to present to stakeholders as well.
I think that's a very important skill, how we communicate. And I know someone was asking a question about the important skills that UX designers should have. So other than being able to communicate to stakeholders, what other skills should UX designers have?
Yeah, I think communication also comes with like conviction. So how you convince people that something works. And I think really having empathy for your product also helps. So just very timely, just yesterday, my manager was sending us a video about how one of my product managers actually communicated empathy to our senior director, and it really won a lot of people's hearts. Yeah. So really, storytelling and how you kind of craft your story is very, very important. Yeah.
It sounds a lot like soft skills to me, and I don't believe a lot of schools cover and touch on that. And it's almost like you have to figure it out yourself and working with people. Do you have some quick tips on how people can be better at this?
So communication, I think it's really talking to people. Really, so I read this article as well. They say 80% listening, 20% talking. So 80% just listen, just observe and see what they're doing, what kind of cues they're giving as well. And that's how I also learn from my peers. And the 20% of talking is asking these good questions as well. So I think that's how I still improve myself. Yeah.
Yeah. So how did you land a job at Food Panda? Yeah, because you mentioned something about interviewing a lot for NTUC. But how did you land a role in Food Panda?
So with Food Panda, I think I actually reached my colleagues who was working there, my ex-colleagues who was working there. And then I got a referral. So I think that's why networking has helped a lot as well. So I got a referral, but that being said, I still had to go through 6 rounds, I guess. Yeah, so about 6 rounds of like going through each of my portfolio and then whiteboard challenge, talking to my managers, my senior director. So yeah, really took me that 6 stages eventually to get a job at Food Panda.
Yeah, I'm not sure if 6 rounds sounds excessive, but it sounds about right for startups. So finally, do you have any word of advice for some of your juniors here who are trying to do a career switch to UI and UX or break into the industry? Like what are some of your parting tips?
I didn't join the industry. I joined the industry not long ago as well. It was just 3 years ago, and I think I could really resonate with what some of you might feel over here today. Don't lose hope because I think there's always hope out there. People are willing to help, so just reach out to help. Like if you guys need help, just reach out to me via LinkedIn or something. But I think have confidence in what you can do and really be strong in your own skill set. I think that can eventually help you to know and present yourself in what you're good at.
Yeah, that's really excellent advice. And team, you can actually switch back to Subra's last slide. So thank you so much for giving us and sharing with us so much very, very concrete tips today. Not just on the technical side, but also on the mindset of how to like stay strong and stay optimistic in this journey. And I think if, there's a quote that I often share with my students: "What is delayed is not denied." So I don't think just because you get rejection that means that's the end of the world and you're not going to get a job. Right. So with that, can we please give Subra a round of applause for his sharing today? And you're welcome to connect with him over on LinkedIn. and also check out his portfolio to learn a little bit more why we're talking about this portfolio. So with that, thank you, Subra.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much, CuriousCore and Dylan as well for this opportunity. Yeah, I'm happy to talk with everyone after this. Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. So with that, I'll hand over back to our wonderful host, Jane.
Thank you so much, Dylan and Subra. That was very, very insightful. Even if for those who are wanting to transition into UX and those that are not yet in the industry, well, no matter what industry you're in right now, I can guarantee you everyone can relate to the job hunting, wanting more for yourself, doubting your capabilities, knowing where you fit in the industry, and trying to compare yourself amongst your peers. And again, thank you very much, Subra. That was very insightful, but the best is yet to come. I've heard really wonderful things about our guest speakers. Our guest speaker is a director of the customer strategy and applied design at Deloitte. His name is Mario. Mario, let's give him a warm round of applause while I introduce him. So, shall I read your bio? I should. I did. So let's hype this guy up. I'm so excited for his speech. A human that designs with and for other humans, Mario helps forward-thinking companies define big visions, turn ideas into realities, and improve their products and services by delivering unforgettable customer experiences. A designer, a strategist with over 25 years of international experience, he was named one of 50 innovation design pioneers in China by CBN Weekly in 2012. He's a sought-after keynote speaker, workshop facilitator, and a published author on creativity, innovation, and the design mindset. Mario is the director of the CX strategy and design for Deloitte Digital Singapore, using his creative and strategic skills to shape the now, near, and next for brands to excel in current cultures and in the rapidly unfolding future. Ladies and gentlemen, again, let's welcome Mario.
Thank you. All right, design in and for the real world. I have a little confession to make in that I am not a UX designer. I am a graphic designosaurus. I graduated graphic design before computers ruled the world. Over the course of the 25 to 27 years that I have been doing this profession, digital has found its way, and computers and new media, as it was called back then, has found its way into my craft very, very fast. In '95, I designed one of Belgium's first e-commerce websites. That's where I'm originally from, Belgium. But I've been living and working in Asia all of this century, about half-half between China and Singapore. And so throughout my career, as a graphic designer, my role, my job has always to have been making sense of what people do with media, what people do with communication, what people do with data, what people do with that button. So I design UX, I design experiences for people. I mentioned the button, but experiences might not just be part of buttons and screens and clicks and swipes. But it is important to understand what it actually is that we are asked to do. The question, what exactly is UX? What comes to your mind if I were to ask you that question? Anyone, open forum. What exactly is UX to you? What comes to mind? Misha? Starbucks. I get what you're saying there. Anyone else? What comes to mind? How would you define UX? This is important. This is the thing you'll be doing. You'll be put in a position where you're asked, so what is it that you do? What is it that you're going to be doing for me? Explain to me why you are here doing UX. Here's my take on it. Any and all interactions over time between products, services, and people, that is what we design. Any and all. And that's the shortest way of describing the discipline UX, but then everything else sits on that screen. You may hear terms like brand experience, service experience, product experience. Yes, customer experience. It's all part of it. It stretches from things that cover strategy to defining scope. What are we going to be doing? To structure, how are we going to be doing this and why? To how is that organized? To how does that look? And now, depending where you work, either everything is on the table or parts are on the table. And so I've worked at small agencies, I've worked at big agencies, I've worked at consultancies, I've worked at brands. And in various degrees, this is your remedy. I'm currently working at a consultancy, so the whole thing is on my table. We start with strategy, with insights, with determining why this brand, this client has to do anything in experience, whether that's physical, whether that's digital, whether it's the combination of both. Problem finding is a key skill for us, not just problem solving. Quite often, what we uncover is that what a client thinks they need to solve is not what the actual problem is. So one key skill that you will master as UXers is the difference between a symptom and a problem. The problem is what you want to solve, the symptom is what leads you to a problem. Our work will stretch from things that are very abstract, the thinking, the insights, all the way to what is very concrete, the object, the space, the screen, the thing you touch. But our challenge is that for the majority of our time, we do that for organizations that are not organized to deliver optimal experiences. And you're sometimes not even in a company designing where the optimal organization is present. Why do I say that? Well, most of the time we focus on the thing on top, right? User journey design. The end-to-end of how a customer would navigate an interaction with a company. You're asked to do that. Very quickly, you will realize that companies are organized in vertical silos, departments, and functionalities. And the only way for you to deliver something optimal is if you go horizontal across the whole thing, for which a company is not organized. That makes a simple thing a very complex endeavor. A simple thing like, can I use your database to inform customer views for them, becomes very tricky and very difficult and a very long process to implement. But unless you do it, as well as in UX design. So the difficulty is keeping everything that's below, that's invisible, on the radar, highly clear and visible for you to be able to do what's at the top, user journey design. If you succeed there, you, your team, your company, you're doing UX in and for the real world. Big challenge. It's a big challenge because you're also at a time where UX is shifting. So as we would like to say, the future of UX is already here, it's just not evenly distributed. Again, depending where you land, whether that's an agency that has a media background, so they're very much looking into campaigning and optimizing digital touchpoints, whether that's a research company that wants to dig into what's happening, what is the actual problem to solve. you'll be balancing between these two things, where the demand of an interaction is, can you make it usable and frictionless? Or can you make it in a way that is adding value to a journey? I don't want an interface unless it brings me value. You as a designer will be asked to just do it, but you as a designer should, in my opinion, be asked to facilitate the doing, facilitate the thinking, bring perspectives together, bring decisions to life. Journeys, most of the time our clients are asking, can you do me something from start to finish? And preferably before they purchase and maybe something after they purchase. So end to end is sort of the price or the admission that you do in UX today. But what about the UX tomorrow? We have clients that are asking, can it be more than end to end? Can it be enriching? Can it mean something in people's lives? Can I deliver my brand purpose through a journey that I maybe own, that maybe I own or maybe I don't own? Because for brands, that is the shift that is also happening. The history of brands is that this is my product and I want to be known for it. Starbucks came out, great call. But more and more you see brands enabling things with platforms, with technology that they don't own. Or they go into categories that they're not known for. Again, Starbucks, great example. It's one of the world's biggest banks. It holds the largest daily cash compared to any other bank. Why? Loyalty card. The money you put on it is no longer your money, it's theirs. So they just became a bank. That's going to happen more and more and more. Because of competition and opportunities, established brands are going to look to do something outside of their category. Telecom is going to look for things that are more than just providing you a phone or an internet connection. You're going to be asked, what is that for me? How does that look? How does that feel? Why should I do that? Data. We cannot be speaking UX without mentioning the D word, data. Right now, we're all very skittish about that. We're giving you as little as possible data, but I want you to do as much as you can and even more with that. That contradiction, how you navigate that UX design. But that's going to change. Data is already, in my view, ubiquitous. It's being captured all the time. So what are you going to do with that? It's your opportunity, again, to do something really purposeful because of how you use and think and apply the data. It's a big job, is what I'm getting at. There's a lot to do. Are you not required to do everything that I just mentioned? Well, hell no. Heck no. Can you pick one vertical? Sure. Can you pick a few? Absolutely. That's also then the beauty of UX design. General specialists are as needed as single discipline experts. So to get to where UX can bring us, it is important to wrap our heads around how do we do that. With that education, there's a great question that came for our previous speaker. Is what I learned in school applicable to how I'm going to work? The foundation of it, yes, but you're the custodian. Because what your client, and maybe even your boss, wants to do is go from problem to solution in a straight line. Do a knee-jerk reaction. Oh, competitor has an app, I want an app. They have a new feature, I want 2 new features. Knee-jerk reaction. What our job is to take a longer route, a curve. We go from what is factual, data, what do we notice, what actual proven piece of evidence, we bring that into the abstract. So what does that mean? What are themes? What are patterns? What can we generalize out of that? Which informs conceptually ideas, opportunities, thinking, from which we decide what are we going to deliver. And that becomes the solution. And then the whole thing starts all over again. Here's another bonus for being in UX design. Your job is never done. It's never done. Once you got there, that solution, that's your design brief next week. Because every time you put something out there, things will happen that no one ever saw, that data never informed, that we could not have imagined, maybe not even foreseen. And now we need to, or an elevation of something, or eliminate something. And then that starts over again. Our job is never done. But to genuinely do our job, it would be, and I'm hesitating to use that word, it would be a mistake / limitation to approach this only from the user perspective. Great, I see a lot of nodding heads. Typically when I say this, I get a few frowns, like, what the hell, I'm at a UX talk. The topic is user centricity, and this guy is telling me, that's not enough, don't do that. Well, consider this. Very famous quote by Henry Ford. If I had asked what people want, given them faster horses. Steve Jobs. I'm not asking what people want, they don't know what they want. Right? There's something there. Consider that we did not come up with electric light bulbs by iterating candles. It requires something else. It requires a vision. So, when you open up to the possibility that your job is a balance between what users want, but what a brand should stand for, that sweet spot, that's where you want to work. That's what you want to defend or bring into conversations, or that's where your thinking should be. Why? Because UX is a business. You're doing it for businesses. They may not necessarily want to solve that user problem, and they won't do it if there's nothing in it for them. And nothing in it for them, 8 times out of 10 means if it costs more for the return that it brings, they're not going to do it. And you might be really empathetic with that problem that research has surfaced. It's still a business decision. So if it doesn't fit the vision, if it doesn't fit the business, they're not going to do it. How do you manage this? Well, the beauty of it is there is no one truth between being brand-centric, vision-centric, and user-centric. It's equally true. It's two equal truths. That is called a polarity. What you need to do with a polarity is understand when you are over-focusing on one so that the other is not happening. Polarities are very easy to explain. We do a polarity without even thinking about it all day, whether we're awake or whether we're sleeping. Breathing in and breathing out is a polarity. You cannot pick one, you have to do both. Breathing in is good for you. Shall we all breathe in? Because it's good for us. Let's take a deep breath in. Breathe in. Breathe in. Breathe, keep breathing, it's good for you. What happens? It becomes painful. Right? We have too much carbon dioxide in our bodies. We have to do something else. It's no longer in our interest. We have to exhale. But can you keep doing that? Also not a good idea. So UX is the practice of breathing in and breathing out with your brand vision. It's sitting down with companies and understanding if I focus on vision, I I lose relevancy with my audience. What are the signs for that? When we see the signs, we need to do a UX intervention. But when we do too much UX, there's just possibly no engagement because we're just doing what people say they do. We don't stand for anything anymore. What are the signs for that? Do an intervention. That's the job. That's the big picture of the job. Big demand. So how do you survive that? How do you get in this industry and survive? I've been around for a few years. One of my biggest frustrations is seeing talent leave the industry because they can't take it, they can't survive. And one of my goals as a senior now is identify the right talent, can I keep them in the industry? And a lot has to do with getting your mindset in the right space. You do that, you can survive the big jump between entry level, midweight, senior, and then that gap to leadership and directors and all of the above. Because it's typically at sort of midweight senior that you're starting to have doubts. This is not what I thought it was going to be. This is not fun anymore. I don't know what to do. I feel like an imposter. It's overwhelming me. Nothing I do seems to matter. I'm out of here. And so we get a surplus of yoga instructors and we get a shortage of UX designers or senior practitioners. So what can I advise you to do about that so I can keep you in this industry? Well, we touched on it earlier. How you learn UX is not how you're going to apply it. The number of times I would go to a board or business owners or CEOs and I give them my 3-month project, the plan for it, I work hard on it, I need a month to go research, a month to go design, and then a couple of weeks to build it, and they'll go, great, I love it, can you do it in a month? Because that's what matters for them. And then what do? Say no, lose a project, say yes, panic. This is how you typically do your work. Right? Now, if I need to crunch this in a month, what do I sacrifice? What do I compromise? Where do I shortcut? And the biggest thing that you can do here is give clarity around what are we trading off. If you're going to do it in a month, I'll do it in a month. I cannot do qualitative interviews because that takes a month to organize. So what are you losing? The voice of the customer. Are you taking a risk, Mr. Client? Can you live with that risk? Yes, your decision. Moving on. Now, as a practitioner, that could sting out. That doesn't make us happy because we know we're compromising the craft. It's a business decision. It's not you. It's not you who failed as a designer. It's a business decision. It's very difficult to fail as a designer that way if you start seeing it from that perspective. Because you're not designing for you, you're designing for a business. Business says B, your recommendation is A. They accept that there might be risk in it. Job done. I once made fun with a client because I gave them a very strong recommendation to do what I felt the evidence was telling me. And they went on a different path and they failed. And now they had to come back to me and asking me that failure, can you iterate it to what you said we had to do? And so I had my team wear t-shirts that said on the front, if at first you don't succeed, and on the back, do it the way I told you. Now I could do that with this client because we had that kind of relationship. This is not a pro tip. Don't go doing that unless you have a good relationship with your client. Your first challenge going into this industry is making sure you know what it takes to do good work. You become entry level or beginner and midweight by knowing what is bad work and what is good work. You become a senior and a leader by knowing what is good work, that is the right work to do. The right work to do, that is a strategic business decision. More so than it is a qualitative insight-informed decision. Ideally, it's both. Not always. Not always. If you can evidence what makes it not just good work, but the right work, you are a senior. You understand how businesses work, how they should make their decisions, and where the evidence is in your work and in your thinking that would make them accepted. So that's your learning curve. Understand what makes work good, and then understand what makes it the right work. You do not want to be playing in the bottom right corner. Careers die there. Clients get lost there. Upper right, that's your comfort spot. And accepting that anything UX, small jobs, big jobs, medium-sized jobs, they're all difficult before they get easy. We all start our projects with a very good idea of what we're going to be doing, and then in a week or less, you have no idea where to look, where to start. You get reports you don't understand. You work in a category or an industry, and yet it is your role to bring clarity and informed decisions. Again, for me personally, I love that. I like to know a lot of things and kind of show that I'm also clever, so I'm in the right profession. Because I get all kinds of different challenges to solve, whether they're in healthcare, in finance, for nonprofits, in transportation, in telecom, in consumer goods. I can go on and on. So there's never a boring day, but there's never an easy day. And once you do this job design, you'll fairly quickly come to understand that the actual work is this. Doing design is basically managing conflict. The artifact that you make, the actual product or screen or space or whatnot, the thing you make is the easiest part of the entire process. But before you get there, oh boy, before you get there, all the hard work needs to happen. And typically all the hard work is aligning thoughts, is getting a shared understanding, is informing a decision, is having everyone say, okay, let's do it. Pro tip, if there's a great enthusiasm and people just go, yeah, let's do it, I'd be worried. If you meet resistance, you bring something new. You bring something that people need to consider and think about. You have their attention. So don't always see rejection or resist that thing. In other words, don't reflect it on what you did. It's what they are processing. It is a good sign, trust me. Them going, oh, that's fine. Carry on. I'd be worried. They're not invested. Another pro tip, and I know that some of you might think, well, that's not me, because I am not a visual designer, but practice thinking visually. So those graphs you see on the slide, do that. You'd be amazed how much time you save and how quickly that shared understanding happens because you visualized it in a drawing, in an infograph. Meetings can be cut by half by doing this. So if you were to open my bag when I go to work, I got whiteboard markers in it. I'm ready. I need to visualize? Even at consultancies, we notice the difference between having a meeting with a camera on a whiteboard and sketching what you hear, or just talking. So practice. You don't have to be a really good drawer. You have to collectively kind of capture what is being said and have everyone in that room or space agree that that's what they see in the job done. You're not winning awards with your scribbles, so don't worry about that. But you will get understanding. You will get people feeling like this is what we talked about, and that is powerful. If that thinking is made visual and your client walks away and they can explain it internally to people who are not in the room, you won. You did your job. So that's powerful. And then last slide, I believe, no, one more. Who do you need to be? That was a question that came up as well. What are the characteristics of a really good UX designer? So in my point of view, when I interview people, I look for this. Competence, sure, I need to understand how much support do I need to give you or get for you when you work here. Now, can I drop something on your desk and it'd be fine? Or do I need to sit down next to you? Right? It's important because I need to manage my own time, right? Character. Are you the person that is able to take a punch? I'll just put it out bluntly, right? Do you, when conflict is being managed in those design discussions, do you crumble? Or you? And not an opinion. We all have opinions. A point of view and a belief in your own abilities that don't make you crack under stress. Because trust me, the job is stressful. So how do you handle stress? Do you then take that out on other colleagues next to you, or do you beat yourself up over it? Not a good habit. Not a good habit. Curiosity. If I pick one trait out of these three, it's curiosity. Curiosity to do the thing you've always been doing day in, day out with a new set of eyes, with fresh thinking. Oh, you want an app? Yeah, I've done a few. But can you approach that with curiosity? Oh, yet another brief from this category that I've always been getting. Can you do it with curiosity? What? Can you do it with curiosity? Because again, what you think the problem is probably a symptom of the actual problem. And how do you get better at it? Just get out there and go do it. Go do it again. Try again. Try it a little different. And before long, you have enough of a reputation, you have enough of a skill set to have a bit of an autopilot going on. And to have bandwidth to start doing new things or think broader. There's really no other way. In some companies, this could be easier than in other companies. There are agencies that will give you a chance, portfolio, but you have the right mindset and the right curiosity. But there might be other agencies that will not consider you, not even for entry level. I have to confess, in the company I'm at, entry level is either you're an intern, and we forgive you for not knowing anything, or you're an analyst and you have a few years of experience under your belt. And my company has to do that because of the type of projects that we have, the scale at which we work, the speed at which we work. We need people to hit the ground running, as it's called. So if you're looking for roles, then also try to understand, and you could also do that through LinkedIn searches, who's in that UX team that I'm applying for, what are sort of the levels that are there, what are their history, they're first-time UXers, this feels like a good place to start. That's a way that you can approach it. But having said all that, UX is not just screens, it's not just apps or websites. Experience design is so much more broader. Also have to think, even if you're new to this industry, what have you done previously that translates to this industry? We in our team have people that studied psychology. Feels like a natural transition into research, maybe, because our research needs to make business sense, not just human sense. We have people who are architects, or decorators even, graphic designers, we're communication specialists. UX has a lot of communication requirements in it. We have accountants, we have lawyers. The key is what is in your past experience that translates, that's transferable to this industry and the challenges that we bring. If you can clarify that in interviews, you're helping the person that's hiring, because that's on their mind. This person that I'm interviewing now, how do they fit in here? What can they do? What can they bring that someone else might not have? And again, here too, if you interview with agencies or consultancies, we're servicing all categories. So the in category might actually be, that ace up your sleeve that you didn't think you had. So that's what I wanted to share in terms of mindset. If you want to go a bit deeper, I'm going to shamelessly self-promote myself. I wrote an entire book on this. How to design with meaning, how to design and not lose your soul, how to think around things like collaboration, when is that occurring? Spoiler alert, a lot less than you think it does. Collaboration is not delegation. You doing what I asked you to do, we're not collaborating. What is innovation? What is invention? What I hope to do with this book is give enough methodology, enough structure and language to make distinctions. Pro tip that I'll give you in our job is the ability to make distinctions. Anyone who's worked with me knows that I am a rather peculiar on that. I insist on picking the right word. Now, it's probably information architecture that rubbed off on me, right? But picking the right word to create a shared understanding or an informed decision is so key. It's a fun warm-up exercise. The next time you do a workshop, you ask people, draw me a house. And you draw the character, the TV character house. Just to quickly demonstrate how a word is open for any kind of understanding, unless you all agree on what it is. Do that 50%, 60% of your job. And with this, thank you. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much. We will have a 10-minute session for you to answer some questions.
Of course.
You can send in your questions in here, unless anyone would like to answer. I can hand over the mic. The question. Anyone?
Shall I take a seat?
Yes. Anyone with questions? Oh.
Hello. Hi. I'm Imran. I'd like to refer back to your slide with the infinity diagram.
The polarity diagram, yes.
Yeah. I saw that the bottom one is gap, relevancy gap, and engagement gap.
Yes.
What would be the top one? If it's gap.
There won't be a gap. The top ones are depositing vision-led and or user-centric. So ideally, your signs stay above or in the upper quadrants. It's when you over-focus on only doing brand that you risk not being relevant for your user because they don't understand what it is that you want. Someone who did it really well, and I know we're on a UX conference and it feels an obligation to bring him up, but someone who did that really well was Steve Jobs. When he put the iPod in our pocket, he already knew what his end goal was. But it was too big a gap to come out with an iPhone. We would have just simply not understood why would we spend $1,000+ on that. So let's start with something low risk, digital music. Really work? What have you lost? Nothing. It's digital music. You can go and get it again. It lives in the cloud. But once you understood it sits on devices, I can share it, I can manage it. Well, now I can do it with your money and with your health data. That vision he already had. But scaling towards that, then you translate how to bring user centricity into your vision. Another example that we tend to use quite a bit is Netflix. Netflix started renting out DVDs. They still have, I believe, a DVD store. Right? The only difference they had was you had no late fee, so you could keep the DVD as long as you wanted. And that's how they got their audiences. But they didn't go into business wanting to do that. They understood that technology that one would enable streaming. What do they need to get really good at first? Subscription management. And as such, they balance user centricity with their vision.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mario. Another question is, since you mentioned architects and psychologists, what values do you think a background in architecture or other careers like psychology brings to UI UX design?
Apart from a certain way of viewing the world, and that's important to me, so I understand how people see and think and interpret data that I might interpret differently, so that collectively we form that understanding. I found that architects have enough experience because they craft spaces with that in mind. So someone doing this room has thought about every single thing here. How the light will change over the day, over the time of the day, what kind of flooring needs to go in, how the sound would be, all of that. And I find that, or at least it's been my experience, that those kind of people translate that really well, even to digital or shopping journeys. Psychologists is always, there's a lot of psychologists in user research. And I think that has to do with that drive of trying to understand human behavior, right? What makes you spend that much money on something you can get for a lot less over there? Why are you only shopping on that platform when that platform also exists? And trying to understand human behavior is rich territory for UX, because then we understand what are sort of triggers, or another fancy word, semiotics, that have people make one decision over another, and we can influence that. So there's one way to see our craft, is we're in the craft of influencing, and trying to almost take advantage, that would be dark pattern then, but trying to make use of user behavior or change it.
This is a good one. I'm really curious as well. How do you usually persuade business stakeholders who do not see the purpose of UX and align their interests with the UX team?
Well, that's only my day today. Some of the slides you saw today is is we need to investigate why is it that they don't see what you see? What is it that you don't know that they know? Because in all honesty, they might be onto something. I've been proven wrong just as much as I've been proven right as well. So that's first. If they have no data to show, then you're working with an opinion. Don't fight that with your opinion. Then the strongest man wins, and they're the client, so that answer is already no. Root your thinking into the evidence. What evidence do you have to show me that your client does exactly what you say they will do? None. How risky is it when you go wrong? Another workshops. We've made assumptions on what will work. How big is the risk if these assumptions are wrong? I've done work for MOE where we were looking at bringing education online. And one of the assumptions I threw back at them was, we're all assuming students have access to a computer. What's the risk if we're wrong? Children left behind, families in poverty, shared computers that don't have the capacity. And so that catches a client, that's the fear factor of your client, them making the wrong decision. And that is your role, bringing them to the right informed decision. But making that about data, not opinions.
Very right. I guess it also depends on your negotiation power and trying to understand where as well.
My job is shifting conversations.
Best way of putting it.
It's the hardest part of the job.
Agreed.
Once we get to design decisions, it takes off. It tends to be the easier part of the process, but getting to decisions is hard.
Okay, next question would be something more deep. When do you draw the line between compromising on good to live another day and moving on to find a more hopefully meaningful work? Like just going through the motions versus.
Oh, okay, got it. It's my personal view, so take that for what it's worth. I feel that if you're in a space where you're appreciated, in a space where you're learning and can get your curiosity satisfied, and the pay is what you need, to be in a comfortable space, then you have no reason to change. If any of these three or more than one is compromised, leave. Look for the exit. If you're not learning, you're not just standing still, you're falling behind. The world is moving way too damn fast. The pace at which change is happening, if you're not in a place where you're learning, you're not standing still, you're falling behind. So don't do that. Don't do it in places where they just have no affinity for you or you don't feel appreciated. The job is hard enough. You should have some recognition. You should feel that you're part of the dialogue. If not a good sign. And then obviously, don't do it for free. Don't do it for free. Don't give it away. Feel like they're paying you for your work. If that's not happening, then you're also on the market to be poached. There are brands, there are agencies out there who throw a lot of money at this discipline, obviously with all the expectations that come with it. But yeah, fair game.
All right, last two questions. How do you stand out in a competitive UX market now that you're also in the hiring position? What's your advice for anyone who wants to stand out?
First, decide who you are in UX. Right? There's a lot of disciplines. Are you the specialist in one or two, or all? So if you apply for a job that you don't want to do in UX, don't apply for jobs thinking this is my way in. I've never seen that work. I've had people apply to me that go like, hey, you're looking for a PM, but I have a portfolio. Don't do that. Because there's no role for anyone needing a portfolio, otherwise that would have been a position to which you could apply. How do you set yourself apart? If you're interviewing with me, again, I want to know what you bring to the table other than your portfolio. What was your role in the work that you did? And help me understand the decisions that were made. Because this is what we're going to be doing every day. And so if you can in an interview, I probably won't remember you. Sorry. You probably will not stand out. But again, that character, if I'm asking pointed questions, are we having a conversation? Right? That's what I've been looking for.
I guess the slide where you said what the three important things would be curiosity,
Yes.
character,
Yes.
and competency.
Competence.
That's exactly, in a nutshell, is what hiring managers and seniors like you will be looking out for UX people in the UX industry.
Because two of these are elements of trust. If you are competent, I can trust you. If you have the right character, I can trust you. Trust is what we sell to our clients, not just UX, not just buttons or screens. We sell trust. Trust is, among other things, is based on, do I believe you have the competency to say what you do, or to do what you say you can do? And character is, do you back it up? If no one's keeping an eye on you, do you back it up? Right? And that's important.
Lastly, before we let you go, you will get a chance to speak with Mario later, probably on your own. But lastly, I just want to know, what advice would you give your younger self? What career advice?
Oh, don't take yourself so damn serious. Take the work serious, but not yourself. You are not your work. The work does not determine who you are. If you do good work, it does not mean you are a good designer. Conversely, well received and it's considered bad does not make you a bad designer. If you design for other people, there are decisions made that you may or may not agree with. I've delivered work based on decisions that I do not agree with and that did better than I feared for my client, just as much as the other way around. But if you're able, and it's hard, I'm saying this as if it's so easy to do. I still get triggered. But if you're able to detach your own self-worth from what it is that you've put out as work, it's freedom. I can't recommend it strong enough. You're not your work. Your work does not determine your value, only you determine your value.
Thank you so much, Mario. Let's give Mario a round of applause. Very insightful talk as usual. And thank you again for spending your Saturday evening with us for CuriousCore Pop-Up Campus. Let's move on to our next guest speaker, Sham Ravi, who is also a proud CuriousCore alumni. She is currently a UX researcher at AirAsia, and Sham embodies a curious approach and scientific method to all things to be it in her work, study, or play. She has over 6 years of experience in research and brings a deep practice of qualitative methods and critical thinking to the UX field. She's currently a product researcher at AirAsia Super App. She's also a published author, focusing on system-level challenges and opportunities in scaling information and communications technology in education. Building spaces for experience, sharing amongst marginalized communities is an important cause for Sham. In that front, she organizes events for queer South Asian women, non-binary, and trans people of all genders and volunteers her time to improve access to education and technology for marginalized students. Ladies and gentlemen, Shamra B.
Thanks for the introduction. So I'm going to speak a little bit about getting into UX research and transitioning from a non-tech background to a tech industry. So let me start a little bit about my journey. So I started out as a teacher. I used to teach biology in schools, and since then I've done educational research and pretty much focused on social sciences research. And as the introduction mentioned, I was really interested in scaling ICT innovations in schools. I really wanted to understand these problems that happens in the system, as well as doing a PhD project on actually social justice issues with science education. So that's really the background that I came from, right? So there's like very rigorous academic research. My research projects last 2 to 3 years. Who has that time in UX, right? Like 2 to 3 years, I have to write grants, right? Grants are the only way I get money to do research. So thinking about all of these things, my next question was, do I have what it takes to do UX research? And the long story short, well, I'm happy to report that I currently am doing product research at Ideation. So, but this did not come from no trials or tribulations throughout my transition process. And I'm just here to share some of my observations from my own experience transitioning from a non-tech background or an academic research background to a UX research. So I want to start here first. So I want to start with taking stock. This is where I began my journey. I asked myself, do I know what UX research is about? What are some of the gaps that I have? What are my strengths? Where have I actually done well in, and where are some of these gaps? Now, this did not happen at one particular point, right? So I take stock at the beginning of my transition process, midway through the process. Every time I hear some feedback, I'm always asking myself, what do I have? What do I not have? Where can I do better, right? So these are some of the things that I always ask myself. And at the bottom line of all of this is actually one foundational question. And the foundational question is, why do I want to do UX research? And that's really, really important, right? Because the transition process is long and onerous and arduous, right? Because coming from a non-UX background to UX research. So if you have the answer to that question, that will actually set the foundation for a lot of things. And for me, the reason why I wanted to do UX research was because I had an intrinsic desire to understand human behavior. I really wanted to know like what it is. And when we see a digital product or digital interface, why do they do these things? And when I interacted with digital products or interfaces, I asked myself, like, why is this placed in this particular way? Actually, I would have liked it if this was done differently. You know, this does not meet my needs, right? So I started from those foundational questions, and that actually kept me going. The next thing is walking the talk. Practice, practice, practice. Now, I came from a non-tech background, from a non-UX background. What does it mean to practice? I don't mean go and do a freelance project. I don't mean go and find some way to do free work, free UX work. And it's not so much about the formal practice. Ask yourself whether can I informally practice UX in my day-to-day life? What that means is like going through the design thinking process. For instance, when someone says something to you, ask yourself, is this really the problem that they're facing? What can I do of this problem? Where are their assumptions, right? Ask yourself those questions on a day-to-day practice. So for instance, let's say someone says, COVID is just a flu, right? I mean, that sounds like just a random sentence someone says to you in a day-to-day basis. But if you want to practice UX, you would ask yourself, what does it mean by COVID? Let's define COVID. Let's define flu. What are the measures for flu? How do we know the severity of flu versus severity of COVID? How can I measure those things, right? So those are the things you want to drill down to understand the question, to understand the statement further. So practice, practice, practice. And practice that in the day-to-day life. It's not just about the formal working environment that you can practice UX. The next thing is connect with people. I feel like we've actually come and spoken about this at many different instances. We had Mario speaking about it. We had Subra also spoke about it. Galen must have mentioned. But this is really something I cannot stress more, right? You need to be able to build a network. And what that means from someone from a non-tech background, it means asking myself, where am I good at? What do I have to bring to the table? Now, when I first started building a network, I had nobody that I knew Uiux, right? Because I had spent 6 years doing academic research. So I had a network in academic work and the academic global community. So I took those principles. I asked myself, how did I get to this point? How is it now that I have a network in the global academic community? So I asked myself, what were the principles behind this? So I knew that I had something to offer. I need to think about, like, where can I begin? Where are some points of leverages? And one of the most key points of leverage was LinkedIn or social media. So I went there and I asked myself, can I communicate with people out there who are also doing Uiux? So I offered my own interpretations. I offered and I engaged with other people on LinkedIn or on social media on what they were discussing with, right? Because I may not know all the content knowledge about Uiux, but I can ask questions to understand what they're trying to say. And there is a form of engagement. So that's how I started with building a network. Now the next thing, people do not buy it. And if they do, they are not your people. So one of the best parts of being the Uiux community, this is a global community, right? It's not just restricted to Singapore or the region, right? You can connect with anybody who's doing Uiux anywhere. And people in Uiux are very open because it's basically their job. If they're not open to new ideas, to new ways of doing things, then they can't be very good Uiux practitioners. So forget about that. Find someone else who's actually able to understand there are many ways to get one thing done, right? So you need to understand that Uiux practitioners in the community are very, look for them and be assured that they will not bite. Now, all of that is fine and dandy, right? I mean, you've taken stock, you've reflected why you want to do Uiux, you've started to build a network, you've practiced Uiux. But really, the panacea to all of this is actually to get hired. Now, there are two things here for me. For me, one of it was the portfolio, and the other is hidden jobs. Now, what I mean by portfolio, so now I came from a non-tech background. I've done research, but the research that I have done is academic in nature, it has to do with schools, it has to do with education, it has to do with social sciences. So I did not have a clear product that actually would appeal to a Uiux hiring manager. But what I did have was the process. I knew how to think about a problem. I knew what kind of questions I needed to ask in order to actually come up with a solution. I knew how to ask those research questions. So I focused on the process behind the research as opposed to the product of research, because that is what I knew I had and I knew I could do that well. So I focused on that in my portfolio. Now the next thing is hidden jobs. Now nobody's hiding jobs from us. The jobs are out there. But what it means is that sometimes jobs may not always appear in a linear fashion. It does not mean you have to wait for the job to appear in the job ad. Sometimes jobs already are available. There are vacancies way before anything ever hits a job ad, a market, or anything ever hits LinkedIn. So connecting with people means that you have the potential to hear about job vacancies way before anything gets appeared on a formal space. So build a network and lean into your network when you're looking for a job. And always remember that when you engage more people, you get the same kind of engagement back as well. So it's like a date. You engage with you. So lean into your network as far as possible. So now I've come to the sort of roundup of all of this, right? So now one of the main things that I learned, because I did not start in the Uiux field as an entry-level person. I'm not a fresh graduate. I've had years of experience, right? So one of the things that I had to learn very quickly or very early on was actually to put aside like my own ego of who I think I was or who I thought I was, right? So I needed to be quite strategic in what I did, I don't feel like I need to be hung up over the job title. I want to do Uiux research. I want to learn about humans. I want to learn about user behavior. And that's really where I hung on to and hooked up to it. So I was a bit more strategic about where I'd like to, what kind of jobs I wanted to do, and what kind of industries that I really wanted to try. Now, transitioning industry from a non-tech is actually really a confluence of many factors. It's not the one thing that you need to do. It's not the one thing that needs to happen for you to transition well. It's a confluence of all of these things. And these are the things that worked for me. And for others, it may be more or less of the same thing. Maybe so for some people, the reflection, the personal journey is more important. For some, the network is more important. So it's really about taking all of these factors into consideration and waiting to be at the right place at the right time, and to believe that it will happen. So now I just want to go very quickly into some misconceptions. So we've heard predominantly from UX designers, but there is a whole other field where UX research feeds into the design of the solution process. So I just wanted to give you guys a little teaser of some misconception about UX research. Now, the first misconception, I think Mario touched a little bit on this, is that all stakeholders and businesses understand the value of research. Now, before I got into the field, before I started working formally in a UX research team, that was one misconception I had. I thought everyone, by nature, would understand the value of UX research. But that's not necessarily always true. What I did find out was that I needed to learn the act of persuasion. I needed to persuade stakeholders and businesses about the value of good research, not just any UX research, but good UX research. And I needed to be able to articulate the value of good research. So a lot of the things that I do is not actually the research work, but actually speaking to other people, helping them understand why we need to do UX research and why we need to do it well. So a lot of this actually also happens in my day-to-day. The next misconception that I've heard is that, right? On paper, survey sounds super easy, right? 10 questions, you send it out to the world, wait for the responses, and you do some data analysis. But what I did find out is that surveys don't actually have very good ROI in terms of the usability of the findings and also the quality of data. And surveys are limited in the sense that you cannot dig deeper into why people behave the way they behave. It's at best good for understanding a large, broad-based demographic behavior, but it's not enough to understand why people behave the way they do. So this was another misconception that I also learned quickly. The third one is that UX research provides answers on how to design. Now, design and research come together, and usually, they happen in a dynamic fashion. There is no linear way. It's not research and then design and then the solution. Sometimes it happens the other way around as well. Is that it does not provide you answers on UX design. So what I did learn is that research cannot tell you how to design. You cannot go to the users and ask them, what do you want me to do? Do you like this color? Do you like this placement? They will not be able to give you the answers. UX research is not about finding solutions. It is about getting clarity about the user needs and getting clarity about the user problem. And also to understand how users behave or the psychology behind their behavior, not to give you a direct answer on how you can design. Now, the last and final misconception is that data is absolute truth. Now, this sounds like it should be, right? I mean, I have the data. I have like 9 out of 10 people want the color blue. Shouldn't that be absolute truth? Now, what I found out is that you actually need to make nuanced inferences and understanding of the limitations of the research. And the other thing is always to repeat and iterate on the research to get closer to the truth. But you will never actually find the absolute truth because things are always changing. People's minds are always changing. The context is always changing. The types of questions we ask them also changes. So you need to repeat and iterate to get closer to the truth, but knowing that you will never actually find the truth. So data is not absolute truth. Truth is always changing. So I've come to that last bit of my presentation today. So I've started with a little bit of my journey transitioning from a non-tech background. And also because I came from a non-tech background, there were some misconceptions around what UX research is and what UX research can do. Now the main point here is that the journey actually begins here to find out whether you are able to understand why you want do UX? How are you going to go about doing the networking? How are you going to go about actually building the right types of networks to succeed in your career? And all of this would be very personal, and all of this would be very particular to everyone's journey. And no one journey is going to be the same. Yeah, I've come to the end already.
Thank you so much, Shai. So we'll have another Q&A session. You can take your seat. Anyone who would have some questions before I give time for people to write and type in? Anyone? Oh, there.
Yeah, I mean, I also work in the insights space, but not specifically UX insights. So I was wondering, like when in your field, how do you translate human insights into design? Specifically, how do you work with designers, and how do you like translate specific insights into specific ways in which apps and design works?
It's a great question. It's about translation of like user insights into good design. I think that actually has to work in a hand-to-hand process. Now, I work collaboratively with UX designers and product managers. So what I do present to them is actually the findings based on the research. For instance, the finding could be that users are actually to follow a particular flow, let's say a flow from A to B to C, and actually the designers find that actually flow B is not so amenable to the time taken, or that's not what they actually want to find out. So what I can present to them is that the users actually took this particular flow, and we want to find out if, let's say, the designers feel that this particular flow actually works for that particular product. So there's a lot of collaboration and there's a lot of back and forth between the research and the designers and the product managers. Like what Mario also alluded to, there is not just about user centricity, but there's also vision centricity that's required to be taken into consideration. So the business needs and the research will all have to come together in a sort of like a discussion before the design solutions are actually created. So I think there's no direct way to answer this question. What I can say for at best is that it's a collaborative process, and it actually will take into consideration user needs, user behavior, as well as product and business needs.
Thank you. There are a few questions in here. Very insightful and inspiring presentation.
Thank you.
What were your push and pull factors when making the decision to transition to UX?
Yeah, I think thanks for asking that question. So I had spent like quite a number of years in academic research, and one of the things that I felt I was missing was actually looking at the research impact. I mean, as you might be familiar, education systems move slowly, and I really wanted to be able to see a tangible impact of the research that I was doing. So that was a really big factor for me thinking about actually apply my research process skills. And UX research was a natural tool towards that because I wanted to understand people, I wanted to understand why they did what they did, and I had a vested interest in this. So I think that was both a push and a pull, you know, the research impact as well as my own personality and thinking about human behavior.
What's the most intimidating moment that you experienced during the transition into UX research?
Oh, thanks for asking that question. So, I mean, this journey was like 6 to 8 months, right? I mean, it wasn't like something that happened overnight, like, okay, I woke up one day and I want to do UX research. That did not happen. There was a lot of deliberate moves that I had to make, right? The first deliberate move was actually to understand the language of UX. Now, the very first interview that I did for a UX researcher role, I went up to the last interview, it was a round of 4 interviews. And at the last interview, the feedback that I got was that actually I wasn't UX, right? So that was like a huge, like a taking stock moment there for me because I was saying thematic analysis, they were saying affinity mapping, right? I was saying interview protocol, they were saying interview guide. Essentially the same thing, but the language is very different. And the language is important because as part of my job, I need to communicate very clearly what I am doing in a multifunctional team, right? So that was a super important point for me. And that was actually one of the things that actually was a factor in my taking stock process, right? And going back to intimidating, I think it's really about knowing that you don't know everything and that sometimes you have to reframe your mind into thinking that you actually have to learn new ways of speaking about the same things. Okay? That was something that I experienced.
In line with learning how to communicate, right? There's a question here. How did you educate your stakeholders about the Valuex research?
Yeah, I think that's an ongoing process, and I'm actually still in the process of learning about this. Right? I mean, there's always pushback from stakeholders whenever we share UX research, right? We tell them that users behave in this particular way, but yet they have a particular preconceived notion about how they should be behaving, right? And I think there's no straight answer for this. I would present the data and I would present these as the findings. The stakeholders and us and the designers can actually enter into a discussion where we try to think about the trade-offs that we have to make, think about the limitations of those designs. And I think it has to happen in a collaborative fashion. It's not a one-size-fits-all. I can't just say, this is my finding, do this now, right? I think that never happens. I think learning about the collaboration was really important for me, and to understand that there are certain limitations and certain trade-offs.
Well, that's great if your company values the value of good UX. If you are working for a small UX department. So any advice to someone who works in a small UX department that has no UX researchers, meaning UX designers need to wear many hats, including taking on UX research?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent question, and I think that actually does happen a lot in many organizations. UX research as a field is like super new. People know UX design now, but UX research is also something people don't see but as a specialization, right? Because UX designers also do some form of research to actually justify their design solutions, but UX research as a separate entity and a separate resource is also something that's up and coming. My advice to this to actually look for small wins, right? What are some small research projects that you can do that actually has a direct measurable impact? For instance, if let's say you want to measure like click-through rates, right? And speak with the designers, like what can potentially improve that? Do a very small research that stakeholders can see how this small research project can give you direct impact. I think that always helps. And I think look for small wins, don't look for like large big scale research, user behavior research projects that may or may not actually give you very tactical decisions that you can make. And so, yeah, be very tactical about what kind of research you pick, especially when communicating with stakeholders who don't always understand the value of UX research.
So have there been projects where the research generated wrong customer insights and then the design failed? If so, what went wrong?
So I would like to ask, like, what does that mean? Like, what does wrong customer insight mean, right? Because if, let's say, we are following a particular process behind, like, the research question, the objectives, and the questions for those research, it's not so much wrong customer insight. I think what I would go back to is the inference process of what we are doing in terms of the research findings. And remembering that UX is a lot of iteration, right? We're not going to get it right the first time. Nobody gets it right the first time. And it's always a process of iteration. If some of the insights resulted in poor impact or poor measurable metrics, then the question will be, let's iterate on the design and not about placing value that's wrong inside. There's actually no such thing as wrong inside. We are all trying to iterate and get closer to getting good design. We can never actually say that one way to go is the right way and one way is the totally wrong way.
Thank you. Okay, last two questions.
Okay.
How do you draw a line between your preference and what's best for users?
Well, I think as a researcher, my main disposition is actually to take or assume the position of the user, because I want to go in there to understand the users, not to actually impose my opinion. Important disposition for UX research, right? Because when I'm going in there, I don't want to tell them what I think. I really want to hear what they think. And I think that's where I will go in. Right? I'll assume the position of the user and not as an actual user. I want to be in their position and understand them and empathize with their user problems.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, that's what conversation and good communication is. It's entering a conversation without having assumptions of where the other person is coming from, right? So last thought-provoking question.
Okay.
You've never heard of this question before.
Okay.
What career advice that you would say and ask yourself, your younger self?
Oh, what career advice
Yes.
would I give my younger self?
Yes.
You mean the younger of the younger self? Okay. So if I were to look back about my younger self, I think the career advice I will give myself is actually actually know myself. I think I did a lot of experimentation. I tried different types of jobs, and I think that's okay. That's part of the process. But I think it came from the sensing of a desire to understand who I am and what I was good at. And I think that's where I will, look at it as like try to understand myself, understand where my strengths are and what I'm good at, and build on those strengths, as opposed to looking for weaknesses and trying to improve those weaknesses. Because I think we want to focus more, at least for me, is on strength building, not so much about weakness fixing.
Thank you so much, Sham. Everybody give her a warm round of applause. Thank you so much. So the next speaker that we have is actually from a community, an interesting community that I want to hear and know more of. It is the Design Page Transparency. So everybody, let's welcome Clement from Design Page Transparency.
Before I start, I just want to say that I'm not one of the speaker, so I don't have this photo there. But this one, I just want to have a bit of your time to talk about something that hopefully will get your attention, because it will talk about, which is a question that usually people don't want to ask, but then everybody wants to know about it. So I'm not from, at least this project is not from any company. We are just a group of people that highly capable, just want to know what, whatever people actually get it or happening with them. So this is, currently we already have, currently we already have a website. It's done like quite a while ago. Done by one of, you can check this one. So if you are new, or probably you already know, this is done by Jonathan. We have a few data about salary, about years of experience and everything. You can check it out. For me personally, this website actually helped me in research when I do interview. So at least I did my research and I know what is the market price and everything. So it really helped me. Also, like when people ask me like, what do you expect for your salary and everything. So you can check it out yourself and see what you can get from this one. But so what we want to do now is to refresh all of the data and also the question. So we want to throw this opportunity. Like, is there any burning question that you want to ask to the community? Might not be about pay only. It might be anything, but work arrangement or benefit, or even like year of experience, background, whatever you can think of, you can just throw here. It doesn't have to be now. We will open the platform for around 1 week-ish, and you can go to the QR or you can go to the Slido and just type pay me. Just remember, pay you, pay me. So you just go there, you can type, or you can also like give it to your friend if they have a question that they want to ask to the community. Just go there and then type there, or even like if you don't have a question, you can just go to the platform and upvote the question. Then it will help us to like what our people want to know about this community. So I think that's all for my presentation so far. So
Thank you
yeah,
so
please help us to get more of the question.
Thank you. I'm sure the design community will also be very grateful for the work that you are doing. So the next one that we have is just, we just want to hear more from the organizer and our sponsor. A very quick one. This, as you know, our community partner is Scape, and we would like to hear for our closing speech. We would want to have Benjamin Dan, the Senior Manager of Ecosystem Development, the community partner of Scape. And Benjamin is a Senior Manager at Scape, building an system with Uiux, he started brewing from green beans to coffee when he was a young barista. It was how he perfected his skills in coffee making and slowly a passion for community building, which grew with every cup of coffee he served as he interacted with people from all walks of life. Eventually, he pioneered an unorthodox approach to develop communities in Singapore using asset-based community development, enabling ground-up movements amongst informal groups, grassroots organizations, educational institutions, nonprofit organizations, and ministries. When he was still a youth, he started 195 Pearl Hill Cafe, a community-based business that transformed and innovate with heritage. The concept was simple: learn from the past traditions, for shortcuts and apply it with the current technology to different businesses to accelerate product innovation and growth. Hidden on a hill in a quaint part of Chinatown, the cafe as a platform facilitations and incubated community building approaches with business applications. He believes strongly that no one is an expert in any community. As a practitioner, he hopes for entrepreneurs and youth at Escape to dream it and live it. Now, with the awesome entrepreneurship and careers team at Escape, he hopes to push those boundaries, enable youth to explore career paths less traveled to grow their own communities. Ladies and gentlemen, we have Benjamin Tan.
I know I'm between dinner and then the day, so I'll try to keep it short. My role here at Escape now, actually, I'm a placemaker and a community builder, and I really like to thank everybody today for the time for coming down because, but before I go there, I'd like to share with you a secret, right, just to close the day. When I was in running my cafe in the place, was not famous for my coffee, was famous for our satay. Yeah, as a hawker, I make satay physically with my hands one by one. So we had actually a 6 months waiting list during COVID, and then it extended into a 2 years problem. Yeah, I think some of you are nodding it and still want to eat it. Yeah, I'm very sorry, but the thing about that was that we were trying to solve a problem, and I was trying to create a mold to make satay. You know why? Because when my partner, when he tried to skewer the satay, he got his finger pricked by the stick. Immediately he told me, I'll go buy lunch. And he just walked off. Yeah, and whenever I hire anybody new and they get themselves pricked by the stick, immediately the next day they don't turn up for work. Yeah, that's how, and it's really a very painful experience. Yeah, imagine jabbing yourself and didn't work. But then when I went into the development process of creating a mold, right, I had my whole team sitting down, we were brainstorming, designing it from scratch, working backwards on how to deconstruct the satay. Right, we were thinking, just put meat on the stick, so simple, right? Yeah, but we realized when we went about 3 to 4 iterations, we couldn't even get it right. And then one day when I was at home, right, my son brought this up to me. A Lego stick satay. Right. So what he did was he deconstructed the entire satay by layers, from the top piece to the fat in the middle, and he told me, Papa, the fat very important. Like a true-blood Singaporean, right? Like we must know our food to the very best. And then he said at the ending you must have that one more piece. Right? Without that one more piece, you have the oil. And the next month will go again and everybody will just keep eating. Right? And I took that feedback and that actually created the first mold design and we got it right. And when I went back to do research on history of the word satay, right? It means satay in Hokkien, which means 3 piece. Yeah, so a young boy, 5 years old back then, right, could see it. And I think this is a secret I want to share with you, which is very important. I think the curiosity and the observation, and taking a step back, sometimes listening to an audience, a silent audience is very important. Yeah, because, you know, when we, as designers, sometimes when we do something, but especially in food, right, you got it right, you ask somebody in Singapore, you cook it, is it nice? They say, nice. And there's, nice, right? There's many, many, many different nice variants, right? And you need to capture that nuance. figure out what they really say. So with this, I want to keep your holding here. So take this, encapsulate this curiosity and take it out of this room, right? Because today we have CuriousCore here, right? And all of you here, curious beings, right? I hope to please continue keeping this learning and get this all moving, right? And spread the love. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Hello. Thank you so much. Why? No one wants to hear me out anymore. Hello. Hello. Okay. Thank you so much, Ben. There's one thing that really stuck with me with what Ben said. He said, fat is very important, right? And I always say, when there's fat, there's flavor. Right, Mario? All right, no, I won't keep you any longer. Lastly, let us all again welcome the founder and general manager of CuriousCore, the closing speech.
Hi everyone, I would just like to say thank you for being here for our first in-person event, our first pop-up campus. We've been operating as a virtual campus for the last 3 years. So this is just kind of like a short experience of how it feels like to be in person, to meet each other, and to network as well. So you're all invited to come downstairs. So we've got food sponsored by Skate. You're welcome to help yourself with some bites and drinks as well. And I would also like to do special thanks to our speakers for tonight, Mario, Sham, right? Sham's our alumni, so she's coming back, she's giving back, so it's really, really wonderful. All our booth partners, including Palace, right, to actually like come here and be part of this event, so that they are offering jobs to the community. For those of you who are not CuriousCore students, not to worry. I hope we'll get a chance to kind of work together somehow. If not, we have a ton of free resources. So you can always check out our podcasts anyway, right? It's always free. And we're always giving back to the community and growing the community and the ecosystem to ensure that we are leveling up, right, as talent in this region. Okay, with that, please enjoy your evening, and I'll see you downstairs at level 4 for networking, and you're welcome to come and say hi as well. And really good to see all the alumnus. Hi. So yeah, please also interact with each other. Okay, take care.